Hej och välkomna tillbaka till Erik Penser temadag särläkemedel. Jag heter Ludvig Svensson och är Life Science-analytiker här. Nu har jag äran att presentera Magnus Corfitzen, vd på Ascelia Pharma, som ska presentera bolaget. Kör hårt, Magnus.
Yeah, thank you, Ludwig. So welcome everybody to the presentation of Ascelia Pharma. So I'll be making some forward-looking statements in my presentation. Ascelia Pharma is dedicated to improving the life of people living with cancer conditions by offering better treatment options. We're focused on orphan oncology, and our business model is to identify, develop, and commercialize novel drugs that address unmet need for rare cancer conditions. We have 2 products in clinical development, Orviglance in phase 3, Oncoral heading into phase 2. We have our global headquarters in Malmö in Sweden. We have an office that we opened earlier this year in New Jersey. We are listed on Nasdaq Stockholm, and we have a solid balance sheet that will take us into 2023. So the pipeline consists of Orviglance and Oncoral, as mentioned. Orviglance is utilized for maximizing the efficacy of an imaging of the liver. So it's a liver-enhancing drug. It's called detection and visualization of focal liver lesions, which most importantly include cancer lesions. We have completed phase 1 and phase 2 development. We are now in a global registration-enabling phase 3 trial. It's being conducted in US and Europe, and we expect to complete the study first half next year. The other program we have is Oncoral. Oncoral is an oral daily chemotherapeutic agent, and it's being developed in gastric cancer in a phase 2 that we will start later this year. Beyond gastric cancer, there's the potential for a number of other solid tumors, and I'll come into that later. So first, to think of where we are now in Ascelia Pharma, we are really on a transformative journey, moving from being late-stage development, where we are now with 2 in mid-late stage development. In a couple of years from now, we will be generating revenue with our own sales force in the US through the launch of Orviglance. We will have moved Oncoral further in development, and according to our plans, we would expect to have acquired or in-licensed another clinical stage asset that we can also develop and bring to patients and build further value. In 2025, we expect to have Orviglance as the product leader in the target indication, Oncoral in phase 3, and 1 or more assets that we have acquired in license. So really building a real emerging pharma company with a broad product portfolio. So first, focus on Orviglance. So first of all, what problem are we trying to solve? How are we making life better for patients with Orviglance? Our focus is primarily on liver metastasis, so cancer originating in an organ and metastasizing, migrating to the liver. Why is that important? Well, it is important because the liver is very often one of the first sites of metastasis, one of the first organs where the cancer in other organs spread to. Very often in these cases, it's also the cause of mortality, essentially what is killing the patient. And as you can see on this slide, liver metastases are very common. Up to 70% of colorectal cancer patients will develop liver metastasis. 25% of newly diagnosed colorectal cancer patients will already have liver metastasis. Same goes for metastatic breast cancer, gastric cancer, lung cancer, and many other cancer types. So this is a major problem in cancer treatment. So how can these cancer lesions in the liver be identified? They are identified with medical imaging, and MRI is the gold standard for visualizing of the liver due to cancer. Provides very accurate detection, both for early detection, but also for surgical planning, surgical follow-up, and post-surgical monitoring in terms of assessing whether the drug therapies that are given to the patients are effective and patients are responding. So that's why liver MRI is very important. For Orviglance, we're targeting metastasis, which is 90% of all cancer in the liver in the US and Europe, roughly 80% in Asia. And then the remaining part are primary liver cancer, so cancers that originate, that start in the liver. So to do this imaging procedure, you need an imaging-enhancing drug. Because of toxicity effects with the existing categories of products, based on the package insert, the radiologist should review the kidney function before administering an imaging drug. If the kidney function is fine, In an MRI procedure, the patient will be injected with an intravenous gadolinium-based contrast agent or imaging drug that will provide a good quality image. The problem is in a patient population where the kidney function is not good. In these patients, there's a risk of what is called nephrogenic systemic fibrosis, which is a debilitating and potentially fatal side effects in these patients because of the gadolinium, which is a toxic heavy metal. As a consequence, all gadolinium products have black box warnings. This is the target population that we go for. Orviglance has no gadolinium in it. This risk is not existing with Orviglance. And that's why we think we have the clear potential to become the product leader, the market leader in this patient population. So this is an example from one of our clinical studies. This is an MRI of the liver. So this is an actual T1 weighted image. And imagine the patient lying on their back with the feet toward you. What you can see on the left-hand side of the image is the liver. You can see the structures. You can see some black spots. These are blood vessels, bile ducts, and a trained radiologist would be able to determine this. To the left is the on-in-hand image, which is the frequently used methodology for our target population. So that is, the left-hand side is what the radiologists and oncologists and surgeons will have today. To the right-hand side, the patient has gotten Orviglance. And what you can see a completely distinct brightness. You can see that the Orviglance, the manganese and the Orviglance product goes into all the healthy hepatocytes, all the healthy liver cells. So we enhance the healthy cells. Metastases are not healthy liver cells, and they do not take it up. And you can see that in the round red structure. That turned out to be a metastasis. And detection of that as early as possible is essential for making the right treatment decisions. And in this case, it could probably be, this patient could be eligible for surgery. It could be surgery removed, and the patient's life expectancy could be significantly improved, and potentially the patient could be cured for cancer. With the unenhanced image, this metastasis would have been missed. That's the difference we make. So one thing is having one example on images that I just showed you, but we do have a very consistent clinical data package to date from 6 clinical studies. All of them showing a consistent positive effect on safety and efficacy. We've also done a blind read study. This blind read study has been performed in 178 patients from the clinical studies and a compassionate use program. The results have been presented at various major radiology conferences. And what we documented there was significant improved image quality. We saw 33% more lesions, so 33% more black spots. And on the very important endpoint on lesion visualization, the delineation, the border sharpness and the conspicuity, the brightness, and as you could see on the previous image, the image quality was significantly improved, and we saw very strong p-values. This gave us a good reason to move into phase 3 and a lot of information on the design of the study to minimize risk. We've also done a study, actually, at Karolinska Hospital here in Sweden, in 20 patients with healthy kidneys. In that study, we compared Orviglance with a liver-specific gadolinium agent. We did a thorough evaluation of the images, and we announced top-line results end of last year, and that will be presented in an oral presentation at RSNA, a major radiology conference in end of November, where we saw that we had at least similar scores for Orviglance as the liver-specific gadolinium agent, which is often used today. And actually, 2 out of the 3 independent readers had higher scores for Orviglance. So clearly, we have an effective product. So all of this information we have taken into the phase 3 trial design that have been discussed both with the FDA and the EMA. So it's a 200-patient study that we're recruiting patients in Europe, US, and Latin America. The comparison is unenhanced MR plus Orviglance MR. So the images you saw a few minutes ago, left hand and right side information combined versus the left-hand side only. It also means that each patient will be their own control. So statistically, that's a significant advantage. The primary endpoint of this phase 3 study is lesion border delineation and conspicuity. On the previous slide, you saw we had very strong data in the blind read study. So we are obviously optimistic about the outcome in the phase 2. We have had some enrollment difficulties during COVID because some of the hospitals that have participated have been ceasing to do clinical studies for a period of time. Now things are looking better. We are seeing good improvements in the recruitment pattern, but there's still some way to go. And we announced about a month ago that we will expect to complete the study in the first half of next year. The commercial opportunity, we've spent a lot of time, we continue to spend a lot of time and resources and are ramping up to prepare the product for a great launch. So the addressable market opportunity is $500 to $600 million annually in US, Europe, and Japan. US is by far the biggest market, and based on our detailed analysis of the market opportunity, we have decided to build our own commercial team in the US and retain the full value of the US market. We think that's doable for a company of our scale. In other geographies, we expect to partner. We do that because we want to focus all of our efforts, all of our financial capacity on the US market, the biggest market. And then we will find partners in other geographies to bring Orviglance to the patients who need it and share in the economics. It's a very strong competitive position for this product in the target indication. So this is a very encouraging opportunity for us as well as potential partners. Now I will be switching gears and go into Oncoral, the other asset that we have. So Oncoral is based on a very potent cancer treating molecule called irinotecan. So irinotecan is approved today as an intravenous agent. So a patient can be treated for certain cancer types with irinotecan. They go to the hospital every third week. They get a line and a needle, and it goes intravenous dosing. So it will be a very significant dose every third week. That means they get a lot of drug in the body, and this very potent molecule is then exhibiting quite significant side effects. We believe that once every third week dosing, it provides a suboptimal dosing schedule that gives it, where we think we can improve on that by having more frequent dosing and have a, at least equal efficacy, a strong efficacy, and a much better safety profile. So that is what we will be exploring with the Oncoral program. We have some very exciting data. There's a lot of data in the literature that support with irinotecan. More frequent dosing is advantageous, but you cannot bring patients in for infusion every day. That you can do with Oncoral, with our daily dosing on tablets. So we had very strong results in our phase 1A and phase 1B studies, where it was both monotherapy and combination therapy. We didn't see any unexpected side effects, which is positive. We're not introducing any new issues. In particular, we saw a much better profile on the hematological side effects. So in particular with irinotecan, neutropenia is an issue. Neutropenia is when the white blood cells the level of white blood cells is reduced significantly. And as the white blood cells are involved in the immune system, that increases the risk of infections and other issues. And therefore that is quite important. In our study, we only saw grade 1 and 2, which is a very encouraging sign. We also saw in some patients that had been treated previously with intravenous irinotecan that when they got daily dosing, they actually responded, even though they were not responding on the once every third week dosing. So that again supports our hypothesis that having irinotecan and the active metabolite SN38 in the blood at a more constant level can attack the cancer cells and throughout various steps of the cancer cycle, cell cycle, is an important parameter. So this is very encouraging. This has led us to design the phase 2 trial together with our medical advisory board, consisting of very high profile and experienced gastro-oncologists in the US and Europe. So we're starting the study later this year. It will be Oncoral together with Lonsurf, which is an approved product, oral anti-cancer agent on the market in various geographies for gastric cancer, also for colorectal cancer, but we are targeting gastric cancer. So the combination of Oncoral plus Lonsurf versus Lonsurf alone. There we will measure progression-free survival. That will be the primary endpoint. In addition to that, we will do a battery of secondary endpoint, including overall survival. And we'll do that in approximately 100 patients. So the step one of the study is that we will start dose escalating for the combination, and then we will, once we set the right dose, we will continue with dosing the full amount of patients so we can get a readout. We think this is really encouraging and really have high prospects for this study. And we're not alone on this. So last week we announced that we have made a clinical collaboration agreement with Taiho Oncology. Taiho Oncology is part of the Otsuka Group, one of the major pharmaceutical companies. And what is particularly interesting about Taiho Oncology is that they're very dedicated to oral therapies for cancer treatment. So they will provide Lonsurf for the study, and also, and I think very importantly, they will provide a lot of scientific expertise. They obviously have done a number of studies with Lonsurf, and that experience and insight they have shared with us to optimize the design of the phase 2 trial. So we think that is a great way to get moving forward and having the support of Taiho on this. So we have the full commercialization and development rights, so we have not given any rights to Taiho for development or commercialization. So we retain that ownership and the upside. And this is, as mentioned early in the presentation, this is the first step. We're looking into gastric cancer because we think there is a tremendous unmet medical need in that indication. But there's a potential way beyond gastric cancer alone. And as you can see here, intravenous irinotecan is already approved for colorectal cancer and for pancreatic cancer. But there are a number of other solid tumor types where irinotecan have been proven or have been shown in publications and studies that it has an effect. And in some indications, they are included in the NCCN guidelines for treating cancer. So I think there's a lot of rationale, a lot of reason to believe that gastric cancer is not the only indication. We can go way beyond that. So rounding off and looking at what are the priorities, what is the high-level milestones that we are looking at right now. So we expect later this year to initiate the phase 2 trial for Oncoral. We are working as hard as we can on the Orviglance patient enrollment. We expect to have this study fully enrolled by the first half next year. And then we continue our commercial preparations for Orviglance, planning a launch in the second half of 2023. So with that, I'd like to end my presentation and open up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Magnus, for a brilliant presentation. So you're eyeing top-line data for Orviglance now during next year with a potential commercialization in 2023. Where are you currently in the process of your pre-commercialization activities?
So we've been expanding the organization quite significantly. We are a little bit more than 20 people now. And a lot of the recruitments in recent time has been on the commercial side, on the experts on market access and marketing, and people who are very senior and able to build a strong launch plan. We're working extensively with experts, consultants to help line up the distribution flow, getting the full plan and agreements in place from the shipment from the factory warehouse all the way to the hospitals where the patient needed. So that's a lot of work, a lot of things, and obviously we are spending a lot of money and resources also on understanding the different dynamics, in particular in the US, also relating to market access, pricing, reimbursement, etc.
Okay.
So we're making good progress, but I think we are, we're launching in second half 23. It's roughly 2 years from now. And I would say we're already doing quite a lot.
Sounds exciting. And why did you choose to commercialize yourself in the US and out-license in the other areas?
It's one of the things that I think is extremely important being a company of our size is to focus. Focus on things that make a tremendous difference and where if we are successful on these activities, there will be a tremendous value creation. The US is the single biggest market. The patient flow is in a way where we believe, based on the current understanding that we have, that we can target these patients with a reasonably small commercial organization. In that way, we will retain the full economics of the biggest market in the world. Europe is also attractive, but it's less attractive than US. And I'd rather do US really well and share the economics of Europe with a partner and allow us to just focus on the US commercial side, and also Japan and other geographies. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of commercial potential for helping patients with Orviglance. But if we do US really well, we will be very successful. And then we will be working with partners in other geographies. I think that's also a risk mitigation strategy.
Right, right. Yeah, and we got a lot of questions regarding the recruitment to your phase 3 trial with Orviglance. You say the first half of 2022. Could you specify that a little bit? Do you think it will be early 2022, late?
I understand the curiosity, and I share that. But we have stated first half 2022, and we will. I cannot comment any further on that.
Right, I understand. But have you taken any measures to ensure that the patient recruitment will be on time here? Have you activated more centers, or have you done any?
Yeah, absolutely. So when the pandemic hit, everybody was quite shocked, and we were looking at already back then what kind of things can we do, and we have continued to do that throughout. So initially we expected 35 clinical sites, and now we're probably more in the 45-50 range. We've also looked at one of the barriers at the individual hospitals, and one of the things we found was that patients during a pandemic, if you are a patient with poor kidney function and cancer, those patients are very fragile. And the interest in coming to a hospital is minimized, absolutely. And therefore, we have added sort of the option of doing the follow-up safety visits, at least some of them, with a home nurse. So we can send a nurse to the patient on the following days instead of having the patient go to the hospital. And we think that has had some effect. But obviously, we've also had situations where the hospitals have been under severe strain and really in emergency mode to treat the number of COVID patients. And we have seen letters from some of the hospitals where the hospital management sent a letter to all the doctors saying, right now, we don't do any clinical research unless it's COVID-19, period. There are no exceptions. And obviously, then we can recruit. So these sites are getting back, but then we go back to the sites and we do retraining to follow the GCP guidelines and remind them on exactly how to fill in the data in the system and so forth. So it creates delays, and as we have communicated that we're dealing with it in the best possible way, trying to turn every stone in terms of how can we do this faster. Right.
And if the corona situation were to escalate further in the US, is there a possibility that you could end the study earlier and still see a clinical benefit with that patient sample? What I'm asking is if it's overpowered, the study, to show a clinical benefit at 200 patients.
No, so I think we've made a thorough statistical analysis. Obviously also don't want to go in and risk underpowering the study, but we think this is actually a reasonable patient sample in terms of getting the statistical power that will convincingly give us a positive readout of the study. So I think that's not. I think if we are seeing, for instance, in the US, where in some regions of US vaccination rates are fairly low, then you could say we are recruiting patients all across the US. We are recruiting patients in Europe and Latin America. We are opening up, but that's also taking quite some time. I think we will share from, you could say, the geographical diversity. But obviously, every place that we're doing a study where there's a lot of COVID, that's a challenge. But I think we have a fair number of sites now that help us get us where we want to be.
Right. And there are certainly many factors that runs in favor of a positive readout in the phase 3. You mentioned a few, that every patient is his own control, and you have a great p-values in your phase 2 studies and so on. I'm wondering about because it is a subjective measurement that you do. There is a radiologist that are checking the two images and comparing. Do you see any risks in this?
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously taken every step we can to ensure that to minimize any risk, any bias. So we're following, you could say, the guidelines for how to do these readings. And how, the way it actually works is that for the primary endpoint, we will take all the images once they are made at the site, at the hospital. They will be sent to a central database, and there all the images will be compiled. And as we progress in the study, some 3 trained independent radiologists will review these images, and they will score them. And it's not just, you could say any kind of score. They need to sort of mark, I see a lesion here, this is my scoring, this is, and they do that based on a well-defined protocol. And then it's the results of these 3 radiologists that need to be positive. And it's sufficient if 2 out of 3 have superiority. So we can have, in theory, we can have 1 outlier radiologist and still have a successful outcome.
Yeah, that's interesting what you mentioned, that 2 needs to
Yeah.
Okay, and how are you planning to commercialize Oncoral? Is it only partner, or are you considering building up a force?
I think it's a much larger commercial organization you need to commercialize Oncoral compared to Orviglance. I think we're probably more likely to partner Oncoral, also because with a pharma partner with Oncoral, we could actually move into many other indications, which will significantly expand the commercial opportunity. Gastric cancer is $3 to $4 billion annually, so it's a quite sizable market. But it's there are lots of other opportunities, and with a pharma partner we could better access those markets. And obviously with the commercial capabilities of a pharma partner, we could also have a higher top line.
Right.
So it's different commercial dynamics than Orviglance. There we probably need to partner earlier than we need to do with Orviglance.
Interesting. And you're seeking for a partner in Europe and other areas for Orviglance. What kind of player are you looking for here? Is it like a sort of larger player or some niche player niching on that field, so to say?
So we are. I think there is a wide range of companies that could fit this. What we are looking into in particular is companies that have a commercial infrastructure that will allow them to be successful. And what do we mean by that? That means obviously they need to have a team on the ground in the various areas, various countries. They need to have a good track record in market access pricing, because it's product for rare patients, and they need to be able to know these processes and manage the payer systems in the various countries. And then they need to be able to go to the hospitals where our patients are. And that's, I see as more a sort of a specialty pharmaceutical product in the distribution chain. So I think there's a reasonably wide range of companies that could do this well. And obviously for us, it's important to find the right partner that is equally motivated to bring Orviglance to the patients, and also where the economic potential of the product is meaningful to their P&L, to avoid being deprioritized in whatever internal discussions that always happen in big pharma.
Right. Okay, I got some questions from the audience. When in time are you planning to sign a partnership with Mangoral or Orviglance in Europe and Japan? Is it before phase 3 readout?
So we have not communicated anything on that, and I would never communicate anything on that. I think we want to sign the agreement once we have the right partner and we've come to that stage in the negotiation. So I think that could happen before, it could happen after. I mean, there are arguments either way, right? So we could do you would say, risk mitigated structure before data readout, or we could be in a situation where we have the data readout, so the partner could assess that and be even more comfortable on the success before signing. So I think both options could work.
Yeah. Okay, last question here. Where is Ascelia Pharma in 5 years?
So in 5 years, we will have Orviglance as the product leader in the target segments. Oncoral will probably be in phase 3 and probably together with a pharma partner. And then we have one or more in-licensed clinical stage assets targeting orphan conditions, where we can do the same as we've done with first Orviglance and secondly Oncoral, develop them for these targeted patient populations with a high level of unmet medical need, where we can help these patients and build tremendous value on the way. So that's where we're going to be.
Yeah. What a great question to end it with.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Magnus.